Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasni Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 31, verse 15. Atatiyat bhavan hani kananam Shruti yugayate tvam apasyatam Kutila kuntalam srimukam chate Jada udikshatam pakshma kudrasam. Atati, travel, yat, when, bhavan, you, ahani, during the daytime, kananam, to the forest, through tea, about 1/1700th of a second. Yugayate becomes like an entire millennium. Tvam, you, apasyatam, for those who do not see. Kutila, curling, kuntalam, with locks of hair. Shri, beautiful, mukam, face. Cha, and te, your, jadha, foolish, udikshatam, for those who are eagerly looking. Pakshma, of lids. Krit, the creator. Drisham, of the eyes. Translation: when you go off to the forest during the day, a tiny fraction of a second becomes like a millennium for us because we cannot see you. And even when we can eagerly look upon your beautiful face, so lovely with its adornment of curly locks, our pleasure is hindered by our eyelids, which were fashioned by the foolish creator. Dear Achyuta, you know very well why we have come here. Who but a cheater like you would abandon young women who come to see you in the middle of the night, enchanted by the loud song of his flute? Just to see you, we have completely rejected our husbands, children, ancestors, brothers, and other relatives. Our minds are repeatedly bewildered as we think of the intimate conversations we had with you in secret. Feel the rise of lust in our hearts, and remember your smiling face, your loving glances, and your broad chest, the resting place of the goddess of fortune. Thus we experience the most severe hankering for you. O beloved, your all-auspicious appearance vanquishes the distress of those living in Vraja's forests. Our minds long for your association. Please give to us just a bit of that medicine which counteracts the disease in your devotees' hearts. Purport: according to the Acharyas, the Gopis repeatedly entreat Krishna to place his lotus feet on their breasts. The Gopis are not victims of material lust, but rather they are absorbed in pure love of Godhead, and thus want to serve Lord Krishna's lotus feet by offering their beautiful breasts to him. Materialistic persons who are victims of mundane sex desire will not be able to understand how these conjugal dealings take place on a pure spiritual platform, and that is the materialist's great misfortune. Oh, dearly beloved, your lotus feet are so soft that we place them gently on our breasts, fearing that your feet will be hurt. Our life rests only in you. Our minds, therefore, are filled with anxiety that your tender feet might be wounded by pebbles as you roam about on the forest path. Purport: the translation of the verse from Prabhupada's English rendering of Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 4, 173. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 31st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Gopi Song of Separation. So, the last verse 14 talked about how the Gopis were longing for the touch of Krishna's lips, which is obviously an indication of conjugal love. And there in the commentary of Vishwanath, he talks about the sickness that they have, that we are sick and we need the medicine of coming from your lips to cure our particular disease. So the metaphor of disease is often given to indicate their pain and their inability to do anything, as in sickness, we have great discomfort or whatever. So, of course, the other analogy to sickness, of course, is the ignorance of the material world. And that is also like a disease, and we require the medicine of Harinam and Bhakti to cure that. But the Gopis are not on that level of having ignorance. So for them, their sickness is simply the pain of an experience of separation from Krishna and his rejection of them. So it has to do with an aspect of prema itself. So not a real disease, but figuratively a disease, because it is very, very painful for them. And, of course, the solution to their pain is that Krishna respond to them. So that is the cure for the disease. Somehow he has to agree to meet them, talk to them, glance at them, touch them, etc. And this will be the proper cure for the particular disease of pain of separation. So then this particular verse talks about the eye seeing the Lord, and the nature of intense prema of the Gopis is that when they see him, then they cannot stop looking at him, and if their eyelids blink, that becomes painful, because for that one fraction of a second they cannot see him. So this becomes a painful experience, and therefore they criticize the Creator for making eyelids. So this is quite a famous example of their intense prema, and this occurs in a very high level of prema, where they cannot tolerate not seeing Krishna even for a fraction of a second. And of course, 1 second of separation feels like a yuga. In other words, the separation of even a second appears very, very long. What to speak of a long separation of more than a few seconds. So when the eyelid blinks, it's a fraction of a second, so that feels like 1 yuga. So if they're separated from him for some hours or a day, then that is extreme separation, like a whole day of Brahma or something, because of the intense pain. Right? So the intense pain is caused by the intense love. So the gopis are examples of the intense love, and consequently this type of intense pain that makes a moment's separation feel like a yuga. And we don't see that expressed by the other types of devotees in other rasas, but we see that here with the gopis. So this is considered to be one outstanding quality of the gopis, where a moment's separation feels like a yuga. And of course this is also expressed in the Shishashtaka, Yugayatam. 1 second becomes like a yuga for because of separation. Now the peculiar nature of prema is that when they meet Krishna, then in meeting we feel, okay, it's satisfied, they're satisfied, and everything is resolved. So it is resolved in one sense, but when they meet him, then they worry he's going to disappear again. So they get, even within meeting, they get some pain of separation. And not only with the gopis, but even with the queens of Dwarka. The example is given in Dwarka. The queens are playing in the water with Krishna, and in their ecstasy suddenly they can't even see him. They worried so much about separation, they can't even see him, and they get separated from him, even though he's standing right there. So similarly with the gopis, a separation caused not by physical separation, but simply out of illusion when they're actually with him, then they also feel that he's not there, he's disappeared, when he's actually standing there. So even within meeting, there is types of separation, or fear of separation also. Right? So with meeting itself, then there is that strange feeling of pain also, of separation, or fear of separation. And in separation, though it feels like a pain of sorts, it is described that even within the separation, ultimately they get a feeling of great joy. So this is because this is not the pain of the material world. It is not dualistic. So within pain we have the greatest happiness, and with the happiness we get the greatest pain. This is what happens in highest prema. So this is seems contradictory, but actually it is not, because it is the nature of the highest prema, and this is experienced by the gopis. Of course, we can say that not only the gopis feel that separation, it's just not as intense. So we have descriptions when, and this of course is also describing this particular verse, he goes off to the forest in the morning. So, when Krishna goes off to the forest in the morning, then everybody follows him. That is Nanda and Yasoda and all the elders. The cowherd boys don't have separation. They're with Krishna and they go to the forest, so there's no separation from them. But for Nanda and Yasoda and the elders, there is separation, because they will not see Krishna until the evening time. So that impending separation when Krishna goes off to the forest in the morning is a cause of a great pain for them, especially for Yasoda, who has the most intense Vatsalya of all. So she also experiences something. Now along with them, the gopis are also there, and they also feel this pain when Krishna goes off to the forest in the morning. There is a little relief for the gopis, however, for in the pastimes it's described that in the middle of the day, then the gopis on some pretext go to the forest, and then Krishna secretly goes off when the cowherd boys are doing something else, and he meets the gopis. And then later on he goes back to the cowherd boys, and then he returns from the field later on. So within the middle of the day, there is some chance to meet them. But the elders, like Yashoda and Nanda, do not meet him all day long. They stay at home, and he goes out to the field, and then finally in the evening he comes back. So then they have quite an intense long period of intense separation and consequently pain. So not only with the gopis, but with the elders as well. In Vatsalya Rasa, there's this feeling of great pain when they separate from Krishna. However, the gopis' pain is most intense, so even a fraction of a second becomes like a yuga. And therefore they criticize their eyelids for blinking, and they criticize the creator, Brahma, for creating eyelids for them. In this way, this verse expresses that intense prema that the gopis have for Krishna. So then they describe how he played his flute, and it was in such a way that they could hear it very loudly, even though others could not. They heard it very loudly, and this was a signal for them to come. And consequently, they neglected everything else, their families, their parents, their husbands, their children, or whatever, relatives, etc., simply because of the sound of Krishna's flute. So that was described in the 29th chapter. When Krishna played his flute, then everyone left the house in disarray or whatever. It describes how some were decorating themselves, so they were half decorated. So they had kajal on one eye but not on the other, etc. Or one bangle on and not a bangle on the other side, like this. Or everything was in reverse. The anklets were on the feet, and anklets were on the bracelets, or bracelets were on the feet, etc. All the decorations were in the wrong place, etc. So they came out in all sorts of odd combinations of decorations and dress because of their confusion due to prema and their hurry to get to see Krishna, caused by that intense attraction for Krishna. So their abandonment of their families is not something which is a conscious attempt to disturb others or cause problem for others, but it is simply the result of their intense attraction for Krishna. And because of that, everything else is forgotten. That was the whole purpose of that description of the Krishna playing his flute, and then the gopis just leaving everything, dropping everything, and going off to the forest. Normally, they respect their parents. They care for the children. They care for the calves and the cows and husbands, etc. But when Krishna wills that they come to him and he plays his flute, then spontaneously they come to him out of their great love. Not only they're attracted to him, but they are bewildered by him. As I said, they don't know how to put on their clothing and their decorations properly, etc. Previously it was described how their hearts have been stolen by Krishna. And here they call him a rascal and a thief, etc., because he has taken away their hearts and somehow or other bewildered them completely. They have no longer any ability to think properly about anything else except trying to please Krishna. It's a very profound experience for them. So in this condition, they're pleading with Krishna too. Please accept him because he has disappeared at this point. So the solution is that Krishna manifests himself before them. Now, of course, internally they can get some relief, and that is so. Simply by singing about him and remembering, they get relief that way. And it's described that when Krishna goes to Mathura, and he's there, and then everyone is in Vrindavan in separation, and he doesn't come back. Even Nanda returns with the cowherd people and the cowherd boys, and Krishna does not return. They fall into great lamentation. But they get some relief. And how is that? Of course, they think about him, and then internally, Krishna manifests himself. So they get some sort of satisfaction from that. However, for the gopis, that is not enough. And they actually want to see him directly. So that is their plea here. They could also internally get a manifestation of Krishna, but that is not so satisfying. Because of the intensity of their prema, they must see Krishna directly. So they pray that he manifests himself, because they lack that satisfaction. So, therefore, it's described that not only for people in Madhurya Rasa, but even for sadhakas. They will pray and expect to see the Lord. This is, of course, not just seeing, but seeing also means experiencing the Lord directly. That is the result of sadhana. So it is said after sadhana, the result of sadhana is bhava. And in bhava stage, one is able to perceive the Lord directly, meet the Lord, and interact with the Lord. And that matures in prema. So for the sadhaka as well, the goal is to see the Lord or perceive the Lord somehow or other. So that gives some satisfaction for the devotee. But we should not think that this is simply a passive seeing. Simply to look at the Lord, that's all. Or like the goal of some devotees is simply to go to the spiritual world. Or go to the spiritual world and see the Lord, or whatever like that. So that's not the real goal of the devotee in one sense, but yes, they aspire to see the Lord because it is in meeting the Lord that they can actually personally interact with him. So the desire to see the Lord is linked with the desire to serve the Lord. So that is what happens in bhava and prema. They don't just see the Lord and look at him. If one is a paramatma yogi, yes, you can see the Lord, but you don't do anything. But with the devotee, they want to serve the Lord. Those who may have mixed devotion, they want salokya and sarupya, etc. Yes, they may just want to see the Lord and not serve the Lord also. And the Lord also rewards them so that you can go to the spiritual world. You can also do that. You can get a spiritual body, see the Lord, like that, and you're satisfied with that. But those who are doing Sudha Bhakti, they want to serve the Lord, meet the Lord, and then after that, they begin serving the Lord in different ways. So in this way, their aspiration is not just seeing, but serving as well. So here, the gopis also, yes, they're praying Krishna to appear, we want to see you, etc. But it's not just looking at the Lord. They want some interaction. So that's why they talk about Krishna should be merciful and glance upon them. He should speak to them. He should smile with them, like this. There should be some interaction between the gopis and Krishna. And in this way, they can have their desires fulfilled. They please him, and he pleases them. So, therefore, their prayer that Krishna appear is not a selfish type of prayer simply for their satisfaction or for their eyes, whatever, but rather it is a prayer that he respond to their love, and together they create the highest type of bliss. And they want to satisfy Krishna, and through that they get the highest satisfaction. So here they expect some response from Krishna. So he can relieve the distress of all living entities because he is Supreme Lord. And they also gave the example previously of how he has relieved the distress of the people of Vrindavan by lifting Govardhan, subduing Kaliya, etc. So it is possible for him to do that. So because they have the greatest attraction for him, naturally he should respond to that. So in this way they pray to Krishna. The last verse indicates their great concern for Krishna. So, when Krishna goes to the forest in the morning, then in the forest there may be sharp rocks or sharp grass or whatever, or thorns, things like that. And Krishna's feet are also very, very soft. So not only the gopis, but even Mother Yasoda, she also worries about Krishna and walking in the forest. So she keeps telling him, don't walk in the thick forest, etc., be very, very careful, etc. So this concern is there for Krishna's well-being. So this is a general type of concern of all the devotees, that Krishna will be somehow injured in the forest because of walking or whatever, in the thorns and even wild animals or whatever. However, here this takes a more intense form, where they fear that even if they place his feet on their breasts, even then his feet will get injured. So in other words, they fear their breasts are very hard like the rocks, and his feet are so tender that even the softest thing can cause injury to it. So one of the qualities of the Supreme Lord is that his limbs are very soft, and so sensitive that even if a leaf touches him, he gets bruised. So that is the sensitivity of the Lord. That's, of course, a general quality of the Lord, not just Krishna. But then if we take Krishna, then everything is much more intense. So therefore, there is a concern in the gopis for the not giving injury to Krishna, but is expressed in this form of putting his feet on their breasts, and then he may get injured from that, just as the pebbles or rocks may injure his feet by wandering in the forest. So this is an expression of their intense concern for Krishna and his well-being. So they're not thinking of themselves, they're actually thinking of him. So that's how they end their prayers. Though they prayed for Krishna to appear, they finally pray that you should protect yourself and not get injured, etc., and take care of yourself in this forest. And the relief may come for those feet also by placing them on their breasts. So of course they sometimes fear that their breasts are too hard and injured, but they also think that in this way, whatever pain is inconvenience is caused by the forest to his feet he'll get relief. He'll get relief by placing them on their breasts. So this is a reason they give for Krishna manifesting himself. So in this way, they pray for Krishna to manifest his form to them.
Well, you find that
soul gets attached to different things like family members, friends, in each body every lifetime, and in the next life forgets the previous attachment. It gets attached in the present life. This is bewildering. The gopis see Krishna, they're happy, and when he disappears they lament and become sad. When will the soul be constantly happy without this type of dualities? Well, the duality of the material world is different, and it has to do with material bodies. And in the material world, because we do have temporary material bodies, there's bound to be the dualities of happiness and distress in relation to material bodies and karma, etc. In the spiritual world, they don't have material bodies. Everything is Satchidananda. So there is no destruction of those bodies. And there's no identity with material bodies. So the happiness there is not in terms of their particular body. The happiness arises from the relationship with Krishna.
That gives rise to the happiness, not the body. The body is secondary. And the relationship is with Supreme Lord. And it is a relationship between the jiva or the atma and the Supreme Lord. So that is a spiritual relationship. It's not a relationship between two material bodies. So it's a relationship, and there's attachment, but it is different. So the attachments in the material world are temporary, and they change every lifetime. The attachment in the spiritual world is permanent. It is eternal. The sthāyi bhava, which manifests the attachment for the Lord, is eternal. It is part of the Sarup Shakti of Krishna, composed of Hladini and Samvit Shaktis. So it is eternal, and it's part of Krishna. So it is manifested in the jiva, and it relates to Krishna. So quite different from the material temporary relationships. So this sthāyi bhava gives rise to rasa and ananda in the spiritual world. This ananda is the very nature of the Lord. So that again is quite different from the happiness of the material world, which got nothing to do with the Supreme Lord. It's got to do with illusion, ignorance, and identity with material bodies. So quite different. So within that happiness, in the spiritual world, we get separation and lamentation, etc., as we see here. But this is after establishing, or after the, or beyond the relationship with the Lord, the spiritual relationship with the Lord. So it is simply a subcategory of prema. So within prema, we have this lamentation, but it is part of prema itself. It is not separate. And it ultimately disappears, and again, there's meeting the Lord. So it's a constant play between separation, meeting, or lamentation and bliss. But it's all part of the bliss itself. So this is an arrangement in the spiritual world, and it's not due to karma, but the will of the Supreme Lord. So quite different from the activities and experiences of the material world.
Maharaj, we find this Gopas, and within the Gopas and Gopis, Gopis get association in the night during Rasa Leela, and sometime during the daytime they snake out. But we never find that Krishna separating from the Gopas in the morning time. He was always with them, playing with them, climbing the trees, playing games. And Gopas never sing like this separation prayers. What is the reason? Only the Gopis.
Krishna goes out, he meets them in the morning, he goes out with them. Noontime he disappears, so there's a short separation. He returns, they play again, they come back. And then in the evening time, they separate. They go to their homes. So there's separation for the Gopas in the evening time again. So they have a separation also. So all night long, there's separation. For Nanda and Yasoda, of course, he supposedly stays in the house at night, so in that sense they're not separated. He goes to bed and then wakes up in the morning. So that period he's apparently there for the Nanda and Yasoda.
Maharaj, you mentioned that the highest aspiration for advanced Vaishnavas is serving Sevananda and not just seeing him. Does it mean that it is proper to understand even for a sadhaka is to do service than trying to see him?
Well, the two things are related. You can't serve the Lord unless you see him, isn't it? In one sense, in the spiritual world at least. Of course, you can serve in separation, but ultimately the devotee wants to serve the Lord directly also. That's in the spiritual world. In the material world, because we are contaminated slightly with material anarthas, then our desire to see the Lord may be a selfish desire. A desire to see the Lord without service, simply to see, that's all. So the Lord also fulfills that, and you can get salokya, you can go to the spiritual world and see the Lord without much service. You can do that as well. You can some service, but minimal service. That's also there. And the Lord rewards that. And for those doing pure bhakti, the seeing of the Lord is also a type of service to the Lord, because in seeing the Lord, they glorify the Lord also, the sight of the Lord. So having darshan of the Lord in the temple is one of the types of devotional service. It's a service to the Lord, to see the Lord. By seeing Him, we are able to appreciate Him, and that way we respect Him, and that's a type of service as well. So it's not for ourselves, but it's actually part of praising the Supreme Lord.
Well, in the context of Yadyad Acharati Shestas, these activities of Parakiya Rasa does not go well. How to understand, Maharaj?
Yeah, see, Dharma is one level of activity, and then acting for others to follow, that's the one level in the material world. And if the king acts according to Dharma, everybody follows that. So natural. And if he follows sinful activity, they follow that also. So whatever the leader does, everybody follows. That's the basic principle. So it's better they follow Dharma than Adharma. They avoid sin rather than committing sin. So ultimately, the highest leader is the Supreme Lord. Everybody should follow the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord, of course, often also follows Dharma. So he does so in Dwarka. In general, he follows the principles of Dharma and acts like a good king, etc. That's there. However, some aspects go beyond Dharma. So that is why we say that bhakti is independent of Dharma. And if you do the activities of bhakti, you can give up the rules of Dharma. Not that we commit sinful activities, but there are many rules and regulations like caste rules, etc., varna rules, ashram rules. So the devotee may neglect those rules, and he doesn't commit any sin by neglecting them because he's doing bhakti. So the rules of bhakti supersede the rules of karma yoga and varnashram, etc., dharma. So not only for Krishna, but even for the devotee, the performance of bhakti supersedes the other rules. In some cases, most cases, probably there's no conflict. In some cases, there may be conflict. So if Dharma says worship devatas, the bhakti says don't worship devatas, then we don't worship them. So that's there for the devotees. So Krishna is in the highest level, so then he is not even subjected to the laws of Dharma. So what looks like a sin for him is not a sin. If he steals, it's not stealing. Whatever he does, there's no papa for the Lord. Everything is perfect because it is for the benefit of the jivas and for giving them bliss. So therefore, no sin attached to the Supreme Lord at all in any form. So we can criticize Krishna. Why does he steal butter? Because he should be the Supreme Lord and act according to Dharma and not steal to teach other people. But this is on a higher level. Why does he steal on the higher level? Is establishing an affectionate relationship with Yasoda and the Gopis. This is part of their interaction in prema. So that's beyond the dharma of the material world. The motivation is not selfish desire and selfish enjoyment, etc. It is spreading bliss in the spiritual world to all the devotees. So the motives are quite different, and it's coming from the Supreme Lord to create bliss in the spiritual world. So therefore the concepts of normal dharma do not apply there in many cases, particularly with the form of Krishna. With the Vishnu forms, etc., they generally conform. But with Krishna, different.
Well, you mentioned about the sensitivity of the Lord. By a petal, a flower petal touching the Lord, he gets a bruise and things like that. But advanced devotees like Gopis or very, very advanced Vaishnavas feel that he is not sensitive to the emotions of his devotees. And the advanced devotees feel that he is not sensitive to the emotions of his devotees, and then he is not reciprocating properly in terms of their particular rasa.
Well, actually, if we look at the qualities of the Lord, the 64 qualities, among there also is his, he's controlled by the devotee, responsive to the devotee, etc., full of wonderful qualities, very gentle, etc. So when here the gopis accuse him of being insensitive or not responding, etc. This is a temporary manifestation created by their love, that they will accuse him of different things. That's all. So it is not an actual quality of the Supreme Lord. And as I mentioned already, this whole idea of separating from the gopis is not because he's insensitive, but he has some other purpose in mind to display their intense love, which otherwise would not be revealed.
Plus, see, no, there is a Astakala Leela. In Astakala Leela, there is some pastimes with gopis also, even daytime with Krishna, like a noontime Krishna meet with all the gopis in Radha Kund. So, can you say that those who meet Krishna, those who gopis meet with Krishna at daytime, they are more fortunate than the gopis, those who cannot meet Krishna at daytime?
Well, it's not actually described who meets and who doesn't meet in the daytime. Obviously, the principal gopis are there or whatever, so the principal gopis obviously get more association then, and others may not. But it doesn't say particularly who is excluded or whatever from the pastimes in the daytime. So, according to their qualification, intensity of their love, Krishna will respond. So, therefore, and he is also not, you say, partial or whatever. So he gives opportunity to all the gopis at different times for different things. So it's not that some are always excluded or whatever like that. He's very impartial and just, so he satisfies all the gopis in different ways.
And what about this? You are saying that even seeing also service of the Lord. So we see so many non-devotee devotees come to temple only to see the Lord. So can he say that also they are doing some service? No, some devotees, sometimes non-devotees come only to see the Lord. And after having darshan, after seeing the Lord, they all again leave the temple. Yeah. Can you say that they are also doing some sort of service?
Well, as I said, it's one of the angas of bhakti. Seeing the Lord or seeing the festival of the Lord. One may not do anything else, but at least seeing the Lord is a type of bhakti. Or even walking to the temple is an act of bhakti as well. Simply walking to the temple is an act of bhakti, what to speak of seeing the Lord in the temple. So these are acts of bhakti, but of course, behind that there should be good intentions, like we have the favorable attitude towards the Lord, etc. Anukuna and Krishna Anusilanam should be there as well. Then it becomes powerful. But again, we have more powerful types of bhakti, such as hearing and chanting, which are the principal means. So these are the principal means by which we can increase the bhakti. So the others are there, but we can't criticize them, but they have some dependence upon the main processes like hearing and chanting.
Ramanujacharya as an incarnation of Balaram. And we see such a beautiful 10 canto pastimes of Balaram and Krishna, whereas Ramanujacharya is propagating Vishnu Bhakti than Krishna Bhakti. What should be the understanding, Maharaj?
What is that?
Balaram being, Ramanujacharya being an incarnation of Adishesh and Balaram, Ramanujacharya, he propagates Vishnu Bhakti than Krishna Bhakti. The Krishna Bhakti has got so amazing, nice rasas and pastimes. Why is he propagating Vishnu Bhakti, Maharaj?
Why is it?
Propagating Vishnu Bhakti, Ramanujacharya.
Well, he doesn't.
Why is he?
Why is he?
Maharaj, he is propagating Vishnu as the supreme, not as Krishna and Balaram. But he himself is an incarnation of Balaram.
Well, he is actually being Ananta Shesha, no? Which is an expansion of an expansion. And he's also Ramanuja, younger brother of Rama. Lakshmana, I guess it would be. So his bhava is slightly different. So Balaram is the brother of Krishna, but he doesn't show his aspect of Shesha in Vrindavan as such, in his pastimes. He just simply acts as the brother of Krishna. So the mood is quite different, even despite it we can say one is an expansion of the other. We can say, of course, that Vishnu is an expansion of Krishna also, but he's quite different, so simply because in expansion doesn't make him equivalent to the superior form. So Ramanuja, we could say, is an expansion, but it doesn't make him equivalent of Balaram.